Hello, welcome to another episode of Global Pause, Rethink the Future. So, in today's podcast, we're going to be talking about our choice and the way how we kind of make a supplement of alternatives. So, the way how I'm framing, what we could potentially do, brings up an option, really, and if we presuppose a way of life, so never question it, we value obviously certain things, but if now we can implement something that works contra to the givenness of that way of life, well then at least you're given the ability to subordinate it or to not. So you're making a choice or a value judgment either way. So when I'm looking at, talking about our way of life, what we presuppose to being market orientated, what does it mean to be orientated as such? It's always giving context to that in order for us to make transparent to ourselves the significance of our actions or our choices. So example is that if we presuppose a market orientated way of life is the way towards life, then we essentially accept or value human relations reduced into the good of want. And that is essentially a given because that is presupposed in a market orientated way of life. So if you accept a market orientated way of life is that, well then you accept that. That's a value judgment on your part. So let's say if that's the case, if to be market orientated would presuppose that we, want is primary because money is a given. So that means to say that you consider that money is unsurpassable, because if you can't think beyond the way towards life, so the market towards it, then you can't envisage the way how we could surpass that. So that would say that there's a diminution of possibility that you accept. Your acceptance is limiting in the scope of what is open towards human culture. So that is a tacit acknowledgement. It might not be explicit, but when you accept it, because the thing is, the reason why is that, well, because if you just think that that's the way of life and that's a given, but you don't question it to the degree where, you question a given in context to what? Well, what's the thing that you have to work against in order for you to see maybe the potential that is latent there, but you can't because you're beholden to it. And the only way that you can do that is if that you have an option that you're throwing into relief. And so as a result of that, what you presuppose and the values, the unacknowledged judgments on your part are then given nuance or context. Because otherwise, if it's a given, it's a given. There's nothing that works against the given. There's nothing that problematizes our receptivity towards it by, problematizing is essentially just questioning. That's all it is. All you're doing, all we're ever doing is just questioning it in a manner where maybe we're opening up something that otherwise, we didn't see prior. So what's another example of to be market oriented? Well, so if you accept the world as a given, then you accept the limitation of your agency. So not the possibility for humans to surpass money, but just the limitation of your agency and your agency alone. Now, how you might protest. Well, then you just think of what it means to be, if the world is a given, the world is a given, isn't it? You'll say, well, hang on, but I can make change. And then I say, okay, well then how would that change come about? What kind of change can you implement that would indicate that you're harnessing the full scope of your creativity? Okay, so where do you demonstrate that creativity? Because if you demonstrate creativity and you say that, but then the way how it's demonstrated is supplementary to the way of life that's never becomes the actual thing that you're resolving upon creativity. So you're resolving upon a way of life, so a way how you can create a way of life beyond the one that's given, then how is creativity ever going to be given that is not only just a supplement to that way? All right, so let's just think of what that means, because people will say that, but then it's always circumscribed. It's always as a supplement. It's always It doesn't implicate the heart of the matter, as it were. So when we say that, is it saying it? Why do we say it? Are we saying it because we want to believe it, or that we don't have an understanding of what we're doing, or we don't understand this full scope of the agency or creativity latent within our everydayness? So like I said, if we accept the relation of want as a given and you accept that, well, the difference here, if we're looking at opportunity, is, well, if you don't accept, okay, the scope or limitation of your agency or creativity, well, where could you harness that in a way where obviously it would implicate the relation with other people, because they would be doing the same thing? So this would only throw itself into relief and then throw everything else into relief, as it were. So let's think of another thing that we could think of as far as that what you would accept. You accept the highest ideal for yourself is just to secure the independence from the claim that otherwise works on you. All right. So what does that mean? Well, this means to say that you just presuppose money. You presuppose money as the means towards the end and that ideal of independence. That's it. That's what is and what does that, so then look at the implications of what that means when you say that. All right, to secure the independence. So the independence from the claim. So you're securing what? You're securing independence as a supplement. So then we think about, well, what does a supplement mean in this regards? If it's independence from the claim, and what's the claim? Well, the claim is the use of money and the way how that we ration life. Okay, that's the claim that works on us. So your independent from that claim is resolving upon money to give you the means to remove it. But then we have to consider, well, hang on, so how do I do that? Well, it's by becoming a means towards it. All right, well, what does that mean when I'm becoming a means towards it? How do I become a means towards the end? How do I, if I'm indivisible as far as my temporality, what does it presuppose when independence is considered as an ideal worthy of pursuing as the goal towards that you presuppose? Well, to be a means towards the end means to say that you are marginal in the way that you comport yourself towards the end. Well, then it would be, well, okay, well, then how do I determine how I am marginal? And well, that if you're a means towards, and the marginal way is determined through the way how time is given. Well, then, all right, well, then how is time given? Time is given as an economic good, because the marginal way that you determine the nature of that economic good as to whether or not it is the supplement or the preeminent good as being your leisure, or the means towards that, is determined by you. So, okay, so the way how time is given is an economic good. But then what does that mean when that I receive time as an economic good? Well, getting back to the fact of that you're securing independence from the claim presupposes money. Money claims that economic good. So it claims it, and if it claims it, it's claiming in a way that it can leverage you. So it can either substantiate security from the claim. All right, so therefore you've individualized the pursuit of independence as the ideal, and so therefore money is a given. So then want is primary. Then the relationality between other people is based upon want. So all these things, they're all interrelated, and you can't get around it basically because it's just presupposed. So the nature of the opportunity that I always present, it literally, if you question one thing, you cannot help but question the other, because one feeds into the other. All right, but it all comes down. It comes down to the end, the way towards life. All right, so to be market orientated, we presuppose it would be life, but it's the want of life, because, like I said, if want is primary because money is a given, and we are market orientated, then our way of life is just about engendering want. The want of, and not necessarily the end that we presuppose. Because if money is the given and the whole nature is to secure money is the independence from the claim, then the culture that you're beholden to as far as that ideal substantiates basically everybody doing the same thing. And so, if you never question your way of life and question the relationality or question the diminution of agency, then how are you going to potentialise doing anything differently? All you're going to do is create a market for meaning, a market for change, a market for everything, a market, want of this, want of that. Never, because you're never looking at what underwrites it. So what underwrites it? We've talked about this. There's no outside the market, because the market is you. Right? There's no place for the market for your time. So if there's no place for the market for your time, in the marginal way how you determine whether or not you're an end or a means, well, then you're beholden to that unavowed utopianism. And so therefore everything is externalized or is subordinated to that preeminent good. And you presuppose that. So as much as you might like to say that you value the world and you value all these things, you value them, they're externalized and they're subordinated to the preeminent good of your time. So the value that you would subscribe to them is not as much as what you like to think that they are, because your way of life, you're beholden to a thing that you can't actually truly value them. You can't, because if the ideal of independence works in a way that money is a given and you're resolving upon money in order to secure it, well, then you're just presupposing that your time is a preeminent good that you're focused on. You can't get around it. You absolutely can't get around it. There's no way that you can get around it. There's no way, excuse me, any of us can get around it. Well, there is. I mean, this is what I'm talking about, because the only alternative is that the ideal of securing independence from the claim, the only other alternative is to create a common surpassing that you share. Now, that's the alternatives. That's the either-or scenario. So if you're looking at the transition from one way of life to another, and we're talking about the supplement, which one becomes a supplement? So if you're thinking, okay, what's the preeminent good that you're going to focus on is going to be a common surpassing, then your independence from the claim would lessen the preeminence of your time as being the ultimate good, which then would obviously undermine the legitimacy of money, the pursuit of money as an end. Why? Because you're creating a common surpassing. How are you creating a common surpassing? Well, the credit that would otherwise be extended towards money is literally you're giving credit to the world that you engender that creates a common surpassing for people. All right, because you're not giving it to the credit to money that would lay claim as the independence from. You're creating a common surpassing. So I always talk about it that money conceals goodwill. So if goodwill is not animated, then it can't potentialize culture. So in the case of creating a common surpassing, you're potentializing culture with the goodwill that money conceals. So if you're potentializing the goodwill that money conceals, you literally are removing money, the presupposition of money, in order for it to animate that. But if you're doing that, obviously independence, our understanding of that ideal has lessened because you're having a common surpassing with other people. But if you've got a common surpassing with other people, that presupposes that the relation that you share with other people is not based upon want. Why? Because money is not given. Want is not primary because money is not given. So the relation shifts from want to creativity. Why? Because you're creating a common surpassing with other people. And so you're engendering the very thing that you hold out for yourself as the ideal, but then what you're doing is that you're collectivizing it in inverted commas. And I always say that you're essentially just removing a collective disease that lays claim to you. You're removing it and you're potentializing culture. To potentialize culture is a dynamic. It's what people share. So you go back, well, what do you share? If you're sharing a way of life that's highest ideal is the independence from the claim. And so what do you share now? You share a way of life that is a common surpassing of a people than a way of life would otherwise claim you. So a whole people that is basically removing themselves from a whole model for a way of life. This is the thing. If it's a way of life and it's a model for a way of life, you're potentializing another way towards life. All right, but you're not beholden to the want of life. You literally are beholden to life. You're orientated towards life. Why? Because you are unmarketing the relation. Well, you could say, how do you unmarket the relation? Well, if you're unmarketing the relation, what are you unmarketing? You're unmarketing the relation, so based upon want, because money is no longer primary. The preeminent good of your time is now is not marginal because you're temporalizing the indivisibility of your temporality by being no longer being considered to be a means towards the end of independence. You're more temporalizing yourself as being independent from the claim in your very means of your existence, or in your very existence, in the very way how you're comporting yourself to life. Because if you think that I have to become a means towards the end, so therefore I'm always compromised or marginal in the way how I give and receive myself, because I've held out the independence from the claim that otherwise we presuppose. But if I can temporalize my being an end, then my independence is, if their culture is engendered enough that there's a common surpassing, then my independence is not the independence from the claim that otherwise works on myself, but it literally is the allowance that you have to live your life as an end. All right, to be a means towards it, because the ideal of independence and the freedom from is dramatically curtailed, because you're potentializing a common surpassing, which is a cultural phenomenon, which is a spiritual ethos, which is a completely different way of giving and receiving. And I always say about this: if you give and receive yourself, if you give and receive differently, then the self that you give and the self that you receive are just completely and utterly different. They're a different order, because what is working, if you think of what's the order that reigns in our way of life, it's want. Want is primary. Want is the primary kind of sociality. And so that order of want is what is given in our market-orientated way of life. So you shift it from another way of life where creativity is given. Well, creativity is the order, is so much more greater, so much more higher as far as an ideal goes, as it were, or as a way of temporalizing, a way of relating, a way of engendering or creating the world. Because then the world is no longer given passively in the sense of that you're only focused on your want, so the world is given. If creativity is implicated in our actions, then really what your actions become, they are no longer economizing actions, they're creative. So the diminution of our agency in the way how economics always frames our actions as being economizing. Well, if you're talking about economizing, what exactly are you economizing? Are you economizing the self or the time? But if you're economizing time, you're just economizing the time that was produced as an economic good. And if everybody is doing the same thing, so we create the convention of time as an economic good, and yet we presuppose money, and so therefore money can leverage our temporality. Well, then to create a common surpassing is not to be beholden to the way how we feel, the understanding that we produce time as something that as a constraint that we're beholden to, that we have to economize. There's allowance within that, because we think that we have to economize time, and we say it like there's nothing that's at play, but that just presupposes that we've produced that time as an economic good. And so you've basically turned it into a commodity, but we say it like it doesn't mean anything. We say it in such a manner because we presuppose so much of our way of life that we never question our way towards life. And so if you don't question the understanding of time being an economic good and a marginal way how we receive ourselves, unavowed utopianism, then essentially anything else like that is never questioned enough to actually throw into relief our whole way of life, whereby you resolve upon, well, what do you value? What are you going to make a supplement of? Where are you going to make an exception that will basically marginalise the way of life, and that in itself over time, like with the time given, will become more the supplement, and so therefore it will lessen the rule, and the exceptionalism that you reserve for yourself to create the world will constitute that rule, that higher order. Anyway. Just another kind of way of talking about it. Anyway, until next time, take care.